Hey everybody, welcome back. Tonight we're going to start project 25, which is a transition offset used as a trunk line starter. So it's going to have a crimped or notched edge on the one side, and then the rest is going to be your standard slip and drive. So before I start into this project, I'm going to go through this little layout page, because this is probably one of the more challenging fittings when it transitions from one dimension with the S configuration on top and bottom to another dimension with that take-up. So let's go ahead and read through this a little bit. I'm just going to read it and try to point some things out as we go. So here we go. So we're mainly going to be looking at this figure here, but there are a couple others that go along with this as well. So here we go. It says to lay out the cheek pattern in the figure 1 up here, what you're going to do is you're going to draw a baseline to the length of the dimensions given on the next page. This one is 5. We're not going to use those. We're going to use a different one here. And then draw the lines squaring up at each end mark. Mark the height of the offset and the height of the cheek at each end up here for your distances and your differences in heights there. Then what you're going to do is you're going to bisect the height of the cheek at the small end. So we're going to find the distance from 1 to 3 to establish point 2. We're going to bisect and find the halfway distance there. That's going to represent the middle point of the opening by number 2, and then we're going to lay out the distance from 1 to 2 to points 4 to 5. So 1 to 2 and then points 4 to 5 should be the same distance here. Point 1 to 2 to point 4 to 5 should be the same measurement there, as well as point 6 to 7 from the top down to 7. That should also be the same distance as 1 to 2, or rather 2 to 3. Then we're going to follow that up at the large end, and we're going to draw a straight line from point 2 to 7. So 2 to 7, and bisect that line as represented by point 8. So we're going to go 2 to 7, and then we're going to find the center point, and we're going to mark that point 8. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to draw a straight line from point 2 to 5 down here, and then we're going to bisect it again, and that's going to represent the middle at point number 9 there on that line. Bisecting the distance 2 to 9 using the arc method as described from the previous plate. So from 2 to 9, we're going to use that double arc method, and that is going to draw a straight line through the arc then following that, and that's going to establish points 10 and 11 to give us point 12 down here, which is going to be our pivot point as similar on the previous project. With 12 as the center, then we're going to draw the throat curve at point 1. So 12 to 1, there's your throat curve. And using the distance from 12 to 2, so from point 12 to 2 up here as a radius, and with 0.5 as a center, right here's 0.5. So we're going to take our dividers, we're going to set it from the distance from 12 to 2, and then we're going to pick it up and we're going to set one in on 0.5 over here, and we're going to establish point 13, which is up here. So it's like taking this and flipping it over and establishing point 13 from the original 0.5. Then after we establish point 13 up here, we're going to use that as the center, and we're going to draw this heel, and that should connect to the original throat there if we do everything properly. So that's going to be from 13 to point number 4, and they will intersect. When they're tangent, and that's going to connect, that'll be tangent with point number 1 there. The next thing then we're going to do is we're going to bisect the distance from 7 to 8. This one here, this line, bisect it, find the middle, and then we will use again the arc method, strike those arcs, and that's going to obtain points 14 and 15. We'll draw a straight line down through that to establish point 16. So again, one more time there. We're going to bisect distance from 7 to 8 with the arc method, establishing points 14 and 15. Then we draw a straight line through those points to obtain point 16 at the base down there, and with 16 as a center, draw the throat curve for, so from point 16 to point 6 will be your throat curve there. And then the distance, the next thing, then with using distance 16 to 7, 16 to 0.7 as a radius, or setting your dividers to measure the distance from 16 to 7, using that as a radius, and then use 0.2 over here on this other side with that dimension as a center. We are going to find 0.17. We're going to draw an arc down here. So we find this distance, 16 to 7, 16 to 7, pick it up, move it over here, and then use again, let's see, where is it? 16 to 7, pick it up and use 0.2 and establish 0.17 down there on the bottom. Then finally, with 17 as our radius, we're going to draw that heel curve, and until we establish where it's tangent down here, where they connect from 0.3, so the heel will be from 17 to 3, swing that down, and that should connect with the previously established throat from the other side, and those two lines should become tangent with each other, 0.6. And that will pretty much wrap it up. Allow for the cleats. Don't forget to allow for those distances there. Making the heel pattern as shown will be next on the other part. So anyway, with all that being said, this project takes up a lot of room to get these arcs up here from 13 to 16 and 17, so they're usually quite a ways off the page, so I recommend starting with a larger sheet in there. So let's get into it. Okay, everybody, so off camera what I did is I kind of laid this thing out, got myself started here, drew a bunch of lines in blue pen, so hopefully they can be picked up on the camera. So first of all, let's get started with how I got this layout to this point. First thing that I did is I knew that we're going to have some pivot points down here off the sheet. So rather than trying to use some vice grips and add some material on or metal or trying to clamp it to a table or something, I just started 12 inches up off the sheet. Won't be a big deal. I can use a 12-inch section later on for anything, you know, heels and throats and everything. 12 inches is a pretty decent size. We can get an 8-inch duct out of that pretty easily, at least get some material out of that. If you need it bigger or smaller, that's fine, but anyway, that's what I'm going to do with it. Just start up a little higher on the sheet. If material is tight, you can start at the base and then just clamp some onto it, but it's a little more cumbersome. So anyway, what I did is I just took a random number, 12 inches, and measured it up with my ruler, put a mark on each side there, and then with my longer straight edge, I ran a dimension across the base. And that's in the first part of this drawing. It says lay out the cheek fitting here. So we're working on that. And then I determined that, okay, if my base was here, then I'm going to move down a 1/4 inch or up 1/4 inch, however you want to look at this, and get this additional quarter setback on the bottom of the sheet, because this is the page here that we're actually fabricating to these dimensions. So I added another 1/4 inch up from that and said, okay, this baseline is going to be my second 1/4 inch line. Again, I just measured up a 1/4 inch on each side and drew that line across there with the straight edge to establish the bottom of the sheet. Okay, so with that was going to establish point number 4 as my starting dimension. Now that I got the base of the sheet drawn, I'm going to look over here, and I notice that I need to have a vertical line which is 3/4 of an inch off the edge. So what I did is I took my scribe, found the 3/4 inch dimension, and I ran that down all the way to the bottom, because we're going to need that later on when we get these pivot points with 12 and 17 way at the base. So okay, the next thing I did after I've got my 3/4 inch dimension here is I laid out the left side of the part, because those numbers are given. So from the base, rather where the 0.4 line is, not the bottom quarter but the inner quarter, from the 0.4 up to 0.1 is a dimension of 4 inches, and then there's a couple other dimensions, a 4-inch dimension in between here and another 4-inch dimension in between there as well. So I just simply took my tape measure, pulled it out to a 4-inch marking from the base of the line. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to maybe put a little red line there where it is. And then I measured up 4 inches, and that's going to be the transition. So the duct is going to start here, and then it's going to transition up to a 8-inch dimension leaving in between there. So in between that, from our what we established as point number 1 here, we're going to go up and establish point 3, which is given on the plan here, 4 inches from point 1 to point 2 and an additional 4 inches from point 2 to point 3. We need both of them. So what I did is I measured 4 inches from point 1 to point 2, and then 8 inches or 4 inches, 8 inches from point 1 to point 3, or 4 inches from point 2 to point 3 there. I then tacked on the additional 1/4 inches, 1/4 inch for the top, and a 1/4 inch from the bottom. So an additional 1/4 inch onto point 3, an additional 1/4 inch onto point number 1 there. Doesn't say it on the plan, but I think by this point in the game it should be pretty much common sense to know that that is going to be for our easy edger, that additional 1/4 inch on there. I'll probably add them on at some point. Okay, with that, the left-hand side of the sheet is laid out. I've got a 4-inch offset transition with the 1/4 inch setback, so 4 inch from here to point 1, 1/4 inch back, and I've got an 8-inch duct opening with my 1/4 inch take up on the end there. And then I labeled my points 1, 2, and 3, just like the book has it, 1, 2, and 3. The next thing I did is I established where the other half of the sheet is going to end. I started back here. So I looked at my dimensions again, and I see that there's actually quite a few of them given. There's a 12 3/4, a 10, and a 9 1/4 inch dimension. But the 12 3/4 is from edge of the sheet to the edge of the sheet, so that's what we're going to lay out next. So I measured 12 3/4, put a mark at the top, same at the bottom, 12 3/4 there, and then with my long ruler here, again, I took my pin and I marked that first dimension down the line there. The next thing I looked at on my book was I said, okay, we've got to move in 3/4 of an inch and an additional inch and then yet one more inch. So let's lay them out next. So with my tape measure from my reference point, I just simply hooked it and I said, well, 12 3/4 given, so let's just set it back at 12 or deduct 3/4 of an inch off of it. Top and bottom, put a mark, grab the ruler, and now I've got my 3/4 inch dimension. And then the last 1 inch marks. That was pretty simple. So we were at 12. Well, we're back to 11 and 10. I marked those both top and bottom. Back to the ruler. A mark there and a mark there. So finally, that's going to establish all of this up to this point, the inch, and the 3/4. That is for the notch take up later on that we're going to get into bending when we get into for the takeoff off the plenum. So finally I'm back to this point here now where I can establish points 4, 5, 7, and 6. So what I'm looking at, I'm going back to the base of my sheet here, and then I'm going to measure up those distances. And from point 4, if we go out to the end, it's a 10-inch opening from point 4 to point 6. We'll talk about 5 and 7 in just a second here. So I just simply measured it straight up from point 4 to point 6, marked my 10 inches at the top there, and then we squared them across on both sides, because again, that 10-inch kind of extends out there, and we'll have to put a relief on that. So I marked 10 inches again on the other side, got my little smaller square, and then put that mark across the top and the bottom there, which the bottom was already done. Okay, so that established my 10-inch opening on the right side of this cheek fitting here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to establish point 5 and point 7. So if I look at my dimensions here on the sheet, we notice from point 4 up to point 5 there's a measurement of 4 inches. So again, off the bottom of the sheet, I simply measured up 4 inches, put a mark there, and then I established that and marked it as 0.5. 7 was a little bit trickier here. 7 was measured from the top back down, so we had to reference that from 0.6 down to 0.7. So we measured down 6 to 7 again, based on the sheet, the dimension of 4 inches over there. And I also marked that and set that up as 0.7. Alright, at this point in time, I'm just going to pencil in a couple of little arcs here, kind of what this project's going to look like. It's going to come out something like this here, up into 0.1, as well as 0.6 up to 0.3, something like this here in the sheet. We're going to figure out how to find those radiuses. We know we got an internal and an external throat and heel configuration on the sides here. Basically, if you go back to your first sheet here, if you follow along with these steps, we'll walk through it one more time, and if you read through it and make your marks, it'll follow along pretty well with that. Alright, so I got the left-hand sheet, side of the sheet, the vertical dimensions, and the right-hand sheet's vertical dimensions pretty well laid out. I noticed that I need an additional 1/4 inch on each side, below 0.4 and a 1/4 inch above 0.6 there. So I just simply pulled the tape and put those dimensions on there. That's actually where they're going to stop. This is going to be set back a 1/4 inch, this 2 3/4 inch chunk on the end for the take up later. Alright, now that I've got that complete, we've got to work with these arcs on the inside here. The first thing it wants us to do, if we read the book, is it wants to bisect and find the center from 0.2 to 7 and from 0.2 to 0.5. A couple different ways you can do that. Simply take your tape measure, get a dimension, divide it by 2, and that'll be pretty close. Or you can take your dividers and just guess. Say that approximately looks like it, put a mark there, set it on the end, and see if you're long. And that's another way to do it. And whatever way you want to do it, you want to look at it before you go and striking the sheet and marking this sheet all up. You want to verify that they actually come out. So verify that they are actually set to the center, and that's going to work out. Then I struck the arc there, and I did that the same from 0.2 and 7, found the center, to establish 0.8 right there, and then I struck the arc from both sides, marked it 0.8, and then I did the same thing from 0.2 to 0.5 up there, struck the arc, figured out where the center was, and I jotted that down as 0.9. Now finally that I've got that complete, we need to get into the arc, striking the arcs. Alright, so let's get into striking these arcs. I'm going to go back to my sheet here, and this is where I just simply start following the directions pretty closely. We're up to this point where we've established 0.8 and 9, the halfway between 2 and 5 and 2 and 7. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to establish a bisected distance from 2 to 9 using the arc method. The arc method is simply taking your dividers, set it to some random size, maybe just over the half the distance from 2 to 9, something like that. And we're just going to run that arc from top to bottom, and we're going to set it on 0.9, right there where the midway point was, and we'll do the same from that other side. And then I'm going to go back to it and continue on through this process. So we did the arc method as described from the previous plate. Then we're going to draw a straight line from the just established points 10 and 11, which is going to be up here. So we've got an arc. This is 10, and this is point 11, right there and there. And we're going to draw a straight line through that. Let me go here. To establish point 12, and point 12 is down in this area someplace down here. So with your ruler, we're going to set that up. Maybe I'll try and do it in blue for you. And hopefully it'll come up a little bit better. Maybe not, though. Sorry. Okay, so finding those arrows, we're going to draw a line straight down through the sheet there and cross on that 3/4 inch dimension down here, and that's going to give us reference point number 12. Right there. Okay. With 12 as the center, we're going to draw the throat curve at point number 1. Alright, so let's do that next. 12 is the center, so we're going to go from 12 to 1. Somewhere in there, and it should land somewhere on that red line. Well, pretty close. I mean, I just freehanded that, so let's get this set up where it belongs. Right about there. And then we're just going to strike a short radius there. We'll loosen it up and do the same with that additional 1/4 inch while we're at it. Now we're going to go back to the book. It says using distance from 12 to 2 as a radius then. So let's set from 12 to 2 as our radius distance of a circle. Set our dividers for those points. Got that done. With 12 to 2 as a radius, and then using 0.5 as a center, establish point 13. So 0.5 is over here, and point 13 is right up here someplace. So let's find that one. So 0.5 right there, and let's find point 13, which is going to be right there. Almost on the 1/4 inch mark if I did that right. Let me just double check that. 12 to 2 is a radius. 12 to 2. 5 to 13 is what that gives me. 5 is a similar, yep, 13. Alright, so that's going to give me point 13 right there in that location. Then it says, with 13 as the center, draw the heel curve from point number 4 until it is tangent to the arc drawn from point 1. Okay, so from 13, we're going to take our dividers, make them larger again, set it to 4, tighten them down, and then pull that arc down until it lines up with that inner radius. And then while we're here, it doesn't say that in the book, but we're going to add that additional 1/4 inch on there and do the same thing with that part of the project. Pull that down again until it's tangent with the point 12 to 1 arcs that we have just drawn. And they came out really, really nice. Okay, let's go back to the book. Next, we're going to bisect the distance from 7 to 8. Alright, and so here's 7 to 8. Again, 7 to 8, we're going to bisect, I believe, using the arc method. If I read a little bit further. 7 to 8, using the arc method to establish points 14 and 15 up here. 14 and 15 there. So, 7 and 8, just set it to a size just slightly over half. Strike the arc there, and then go to point 8. And again, strike the other arc there. That's going to establish point 14 and point 15 with them two. Then it says, next draw a straight line through these 2 points to establish point 16, which is way up here off the sheet. So 14 to 15, I'll try to do this in blue again for you. And if you look at that, point 16 is way up here off of this particular dimension, which is 2 3/4 inches off this edge of the sheet, is where that line's going to come up. So let's figure out where that's going to be. I'm probably going to have to extend this one up as well, but we'll see what we can do. So from here on up there. And let's extend this a little bit further yet too. And the other one still wasn't long enough, so have to continue on with that as well. Okay, so I hope you can see those marks where they have crossed, and that has finally established point 16 way up here. Okay, finally with point 16 as a center, we are going to then draw the throat curve to point 6. So up here we're going to set it up on point 16 with our dividers. Set it at point 6. And then there should be a short throat curve in there. Something like that. Reduce the size by that 1/4 inch. Which is, don't get it confused with point 13, it's a blue one there, just inside, that I measured a while ago. And now I've got my throat curve. Okay, so let's go back here. Distance from, with 16 as a center, draw the throat curve at point 6, with the distance from 16 to 7 as a radius next then. So we're going to reset it. From point 16 to 7. Set our dividers there. Lock them down with that distance as our radius. And then we're going to establish and use point 2 as a center. Draw an arc to establish point 17. So 2 is here. Point 17 is way down here. 2 there. 17 is down here on the 3/4 inch dimension previously given. Oops, wrong pin. And that is going to give us point 17. Alright, using 17 as a center, draw the heel curve from point 3 until it's tangent from point 6. So 17, and this is where it pays to have a big dividers. This is a Malco 24 divider, so it works pretty good for this project. The 18 I don't think quite gets this one. So anyway, from 17 to point 3 is what we're looking for, and this is a, like I said, a large distance here. We're going to strike that arc across until they're tangent with each other. And then the additional 1/4 inch yet while we're here also. Till they're tangent. And I kind of missed my arc there before. I'll put a couple of indicators on there where that thing is at, so you don't get confused later. I'm just going to mark the outsides there, so when we cut it you can see it. And then at this end it's going to set back a 1/4 inch, and some people will cut this straight. Usually I'll set it back just a couple degrees from the end again. So 1/4 inch set back here, a couple degrees into the edge of the sheet. So this is no longer any use, and this is no longer any use to us. We've got our external marks there. Alright, with that is the left hand section of the left hand cheek. Now we've got to mirror image that on the right hand side of the sheet over here. Okay, I pretty well got my marks transferred over here. Getting ready to figure out the arcs and everything. The red lines are kind of the indication of where we're headed with this, or maybe a little more drastic than they'll actually be. But so I'm up to this point. I've got everything from this plan mirror imaged across there. I've got my 10-inch opening from points 4 to 6 here with my 4-inch dimension, 4 to 5 and 6 to 7. There's a 4-inch dimension there and there from that side. I've also got the 1-inch, the 1-inch and the 3/4, 1-inch, 1-inch and 3/4 drawn on the sheet there. So that's ready to go. On the other side, I've measured up from the base of the sheet the 4 inches to establish point number 1 there. And then I went an additional 4 inches to establish point 2, or 4 inches down, which established, went up from the base of the sheet to 1, 4-inch transition. 1 to 2 is 4 inch, 2 to 3 is 4 inches. I added the additional quarter on top and bottom, both directions out from that. So that's pretty well ready to go. Then I bisected from 2 to 5, 2 to 7, drew the line, found the middle to establish point 8, point 9 on both of those, and now we are ready to go back again, and I'll read through this procedure one more time, and it may help you out as well. Okay, so bisected the distance from point 2 to 9 is our first plan of attack then, I believe. That might be a, nope, I'm going to step off there. Draw a straight line from points 2 to 5 and bisect it, representing the middle by point 9. Alright, we did that. 2 to 5, bisected, found 9, and 8's done as well prior to that. Bisect the distance 2 to 9 using the arc method as described. Okay, so again, setting it at some random size, setting it right on the middle there at point 9. Hope you can see this. I'll try to get in there. Some random size, just maybe a little bit over to half the distance from 2 to 9, and we'll strike an arc there and then move it over to point number 2, and we'll strike the arc again, making certain both the tails cross each other, and that is going to establish points 10 and 11. Okay, so right here is point 10, down here is point 11. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our ruler, and we're going to draw a line through those 2 points all the way down pretty much down to that 3/4 inch setup down there. And that, where that crossed this line down here, should give me point number 12 after I've ran that straight edge through 10 and 11. So that's going to give me point 12 down here at the bottom. Alright, with 12 as the center, draw the throat curve at point 1. So 12 to 1 is what it's stating there. So we're going to loosen up our dividers again, reset them from 12 to 1, and then we'll do that with the 1/4 inch as well. Ah, shoot. Okay, strike that arc. It's pretty severe. And we'll do the same for that one. Alright, back to the book then. Using the distance then from 12 to 2 as a radius. 12 to 2, set your dividers up. 12 up to point 2 there. Set that for your radius, or the distance of the dividers. Then we're going to transition that distance to the other side. 2 to 12 as a radius, use 5 as a center, and then establish point 13. Okay, so 5 as a center. Where's it at on here? 5 as a center, establish point 13. Remember, this is mirror image of it. So 5 as a center here. we're going to establish point 13, which as before it was easily confused with the 1/4 inch above point 6. So I'm just going to put a dot on this one for that. Okay, continue on. With 13 as the center, draw the heel curve from point 4 until it is tangent with the arc from previously drawn point 1. So open up our dividers considerably, go from point 13 all the way up to point number 4. And then we'll drag that down there until it is tangent, or where they connect from the previously established marks from point 1, which they did. They worked out really well. And then we're going to expand that by the 1/4 inch, and that should connect the other last little bit for us as well. And that worked out really nicely. So we're looking at something like this here. I don't know if you can pick that mark up there on camera or not. And then it goes in a 1/4 inch, and again we'll be setting them back a couple degrees. Again, set back a couple degrees. Now let's continue on. Okay, back to the book. It says, next bisect the distance from 7 to 8 using the arc method again. Okay, watch out for 5 and 9. We won't use that one. We just need 7 and 8 as our arc. So something just a little bit over halfway. From 7, from 8, strike an arc there, making certain the tails cross. And that is going to establish us points 14 and 15. This will be point 14 down here, and this one up here will be point 15. Alright, so let me get back onto the book here again. Bisect 7 and 8 with the arc method, point 15. Now we're going to draw a straight line through those 2 points, 14 and 15, and obtain point 16. So 14, 15 gives us 16 way out on the edge of the sheet there. And if I recall from the last one, the ruler wasn't long enough, so we'll use a bigger one this time. So from points 14 to 15, where they cross, we'll run that all the way out. Whoops, I moved it. Darn it. We'll run that all the way out to the edge of the sheet there. And where they cross out there, that is going to be point 16. Okay, then back to the book. With 16 as the center, draw the throat curve at point 6. So 16 to 6. Set the ruler aside. Hopefully you can see that. 16 down to 6 here. Get our throat curve. Then set the 1/4 inch out again. Remember not to confuse that 1/4 inch with point 13 here, because they are so close. They're only about, I don't know, an eighth or less than a 1/4 inch difference here. We'll establish that 1/4 inch. Okay. Now that we've done that, we're going to use the distance 16 to 7 as a radius. So set it on 7 and 16 for your radius dimension. Now that I got my radius set from 16 to 7, we're going to use point 2 on the other side as the center, and we're going to find point 17. So 2 as the center, find 17 down here. So on the other side, the mirror image of the book, 2 way down here on the 3/4 inch mark, which we've already established with our scribe, is going to give us point 17. which that'll be cut off later. Okay, using 17 as the center, draw the heel curve from point 3 until it's tangent with the one from point 6. So 17, big one here again. 17 here on the bottom, all the way up to point 3. Hopefully you can see that all right. And then it should connect with point 6 down here. Let's see, make sure I got that. Looks like I moved. I better redo that one. There we go, that's much better. And then again, add the additional 1/4 inch onto that. When these dividers are this big, don't forget that it is very easy to for them to slide in their lock mechanism here because of the size that it is. So just be fairly careful with what you're doing there, like I did there. And that's pretty decent there as well, where that came out. Alright, now we have both our throat and our heels configured. We are finally ready to cut this project out. So what I'm going to probably do is take it up to the shear, cut the bulk of the material off now. So point 17 on both of these, the left and the right, will be gone with a 12-inch strip. Just, well, whatever it is, 12 inches or whatever is gone. I got to save my 1/4 inch here. Can't cut that off. So I'm going to take that up, cut it in the shear, cut it there, and then I'll cut the top square, and then we'll finish fabricating the rest. Probably cut these lengths as well, and then finish the rest with the tin snip. So let's do that next. Okay, so I'm going to start with notching this sheet out here. Again, on our 3/4 inch marks. Points 1 to 1/4 inch. You don't have to actually cut out if you don't like. Point 3 gets a notch, and then the other side gets cut with the tin snips in a little bit. So we'll do the same. Point 1, notch there, and point 3 right there. And the rest will be cut out with the tin snips for the most part here. Setting back those corners. Remember, we're following the dotted line on through to this point, and then it's going to be taken out of there. So I'm going to start over here and just going to relieve them back a couple degrees. Nothing too major. And you can actually cut these square. I'll probably cut the other one square just to give you the difference here as we put it together. I can show that. Again, being very, very careful on which marks you want to cut on. You're cutting to the outside for the majority of this piece. If you cut on the inside, you're pretty much done. So, all right, with that, let's go and run these through the Easy Edger next then. Okay, that's it for the easy edging. They should pretty well line up pretty decent there. You can see that I've got the one set back and the other side is square. So with that, that's pretty well going to wrap up the cheek. There is one more thing that we can do with this yet before we finish. and that is to bend the take-up. But I'm not going to bend the take-up until I've got it all measured with the heel and the combination heel throat curve. So I'm going to wrap it up on this one. It's been a long enough video, so we'll catch you on the next one where we'll finish the cheeks and fabricate the 2 heel throat combinations. Thanks for watching. Thank you for sticking it out. We'll catch you later.